Overpopulation is solvable. This may be a shocking claim, but I have with me today the real expert on this topic, my old friend Dave Paxon, now president of World Population Balance. Dave, welcome to the program, and are you going to introduce a film?
I'm delighted to do it, Bill. Great to be with you. Yes, overpopulation is solvable. There are countries in the world today that have dramatically reduced their birth rates so that their total human numbers in their countries are beginning to actually decline, which is a great thing because that means that they can get, over the next few years, they will get further and further away from their overpopulation where they're facing now today. So we've got a film that's about 5 or 6 minutes long, and we'd like to show that right now. It's called One Planet, One Child, and we can talk more about it later on. I forgot we hadn't even used it before.
Our impact on the Earth depends on two things: how much we individually consume, and more importantly, how many consumers there are. We are now consuming the Earth's resources faster than ever before. In fact, if everyone lived like an average European, the Earth could only support 2 billion in the long term. This year, the world population will exceed 7 billion consumers. This many consumers has devastating consequences.
Wow, that is a powerful.
Well, that's just the beginning, frankly. That's really just giving us an overview, Bill, of the kind of impact that we 7+ billion human beings are having today on the planet and its many resources, its many of the other species, driving them toward extinction, already driving many to extinction. And now comes, after that grim message that we've just seen, now next is going to come the hope for solving it. Overpopulation is solvable, and the next part now is going to move in that direction to help us understand what we need to do, the direction we need to take to actually humanely solve overpopulation. We'll go ahead.
When we combine the impact of increasingly large numbers of people consuming resources faster than the planet can replenish or replace them, we have a major problem. The situation can seem hopeless, but there is one personal choice that will reduce the harmful consequences more than any other. If every couple today chose to have just one child, then by 2050, the world population would have dropped by 1 billion. And by 2075, we would drop to 3.4 billion. This would halve our impact, and before the end of the century, we could stabilise the population at a sustainable level, where everyone had a good quality of life, and the environment can cope with our reduced demands.
One planet.
One child.
One planet, one child.
One planet.
One child.
Wait, how many?
One.
That video, Bill, was produced by a man who's become a good friend of mine over in Europe. And he is a high school science teacher, and I'm very impressed with what he's done there.
Yes, that is impressive. Really bringing home how world population is just unsustainable, and yet you're saying that it's solvable.
Exactly, and we've really known this for a long time. I mean, certain leaders have, you know, people, deeper thinking people about the issue have understood for a long time. But what we've been doing is we've been kicking the can down the road with regard to the issue. We've been sugarcoating the problem. We've been trying to downplay the grim reality, the real truth, that we are overpopulated, and that the only humane way to get out of that pickle that we're in is to dramatically reduce our birth rates. Like countries like Thailand, Iran, Brazil, and a number in Europe, Japan, they have dramatically reduced their birth rates so that their populations are either no longer increasing or soon will stop increasing, and some of them have already started to decline slightly, which is a great thing. Right now, with over 7 billion people on the planet, the resource experts of the world, many of them are saying that the truly sustainable range of population for the planet is probably only 1, 2, maybe 3 billion maximum, somewhere in that range. And for the U.S. right now, 316 million, somewhere in there. The truly sustainable population in the U.S. is probably 100 to 150 million or so, right? In about half or less than what we have now. Japan is an interesting case. Even though Japan's birth rates have dropped dramatically, they still have some 120, 130, 125 million people, I guess it is. However, the resource experts point out that the amount of resources that Japan has itself as a country are only enough to support sustainably at a European standard of consumption, not like an American standard, which is significantly above European standard. Probably they can only sustainably support 20 to 25 million people, which is only about a fifth of Japan's current population.
Wow.
So even though Japan's birth rates are down, and even though economists, many of them, like to send up an alarm flag about that, saying that their economy is going to go to heck, well, but they can't sustainably support their economy. No economy on the planet can sustainably support overpopulation of their country, overpopulation above and beyond the level that the resources can sustainably support. I've got a bunch of books that I brought with me today here that go into more depth on this. Yeah. So what we've done at World Population Balance is we've created a sustainable population pledge that we're very excited about. Mm-hmm. And it has two check boxes at the beginning. The first, we've written it so that every person on the planet is eligible to sign one or the other of these two sentences. And I'll read the second one first, actually. And that applies to everybody who's had 5 or 10 or 15 children, and there are still a few people around that have.
Or 4.
Or 4, yeah. And the second one says, since I already have 1 or more children, I pledge to have no more. Mm-hmm. And then the first box, which is the one that many younger people are signing right now, and are checking when they sign our pledge, and we're very excited about it, it says, I pledge to have no more than 1 child. So that means they pledge to have either no children or 1. And then the third part says, further, I pledge to educate my family and friends that the most important single thing they can do to help create a truly sustainable world is to voluntarily choose to have no more than 1 child. So this is a voluntary choice pledge that we have created, and we're excited that we're already getting people from other countries that are signing up on the pledge, and we're getting inquiries from other leaders in other countries about how they can help promote this pledge in their country. So we're extremely excited about that. It fits right in with the video that we just saw.
And the bottom line, 1-child families can save the world.
Indeed. And in fact, if we don't have a lot of 1-child families and no-child families, and a few 2-child families, and very, very few, it's in almost none that are having more than 2, if we don't have that relatively soon, the world probably is going to go on, of course, but humanity may suffer greatly. Will suffer greatly. So another way that we sometimes say this is 1-child families can save humanity from overpopulation collapse.
Yes, the world will go on perhaps with humanity starving, humanity at war over the very limited resources.
And we're seeing that in pockets, of course, now.
And pandemics that arise out of eating poor food, tainted food.
Yeah, food, water, pollution. I mean, all of these things are monumental, massive issues. And of course, it's so relatively easy for us in this great country to be a bit isolated from some of that. Now, I've had the great fortune of, I was first an exchange student when I was in high school in a developing country, and in college I got to go on a concert tour all the way around the world for 8 weeks. I went to 17 countries and gave concerts. And for a young person at the time, it was an incredible, life-changing experience to be in places like India and the Soviet Union and on, and see what was really happening with regard to overpopulation and the pressure that it brings and the denuding of resources and so on. And so we have a window of opportunity right now. Humanity has a window of opportunity with which we can come to grips with the reality of overpopulation, so that we can dramatically reduce births, follow the lead of these other countries, Thailand and others, so that, for example, if we could get the average birth rates in the world down close to where Thailand's is now, and 45 years ago, the average number of children in Thailand was 7 per couple. It means many women had 8, 9 children. Today, they're only averaging about 1.5 children per couple, which is phenomenal, which is incredible. And so it's below 2. It's not down to an average of 1, which would be even better, but it's averaging about 1.5. And if we got the whole average on the planet down there, do you know, right now we have over 7 billion people in the world, and
Too many.
Right now we are, the sustainable is 1 or 2 or 3 billion, and nobody knows exactly, of course. But by 2100, the UN says that if we don't change course, we're going to be at about 11 billion, 10.5 to 11 billion.
11?
Yeah, by 2100. But if we were to follow the lead of Thailand right now, for the next 85 years until 2100, do you know that we would be down, by that time total population would be down to around 5 billion?
Well,
Which is amazing. In other words, it would not only drop 2 billion from 7 billion to 5 billion, but it would also avoid going from 7 billion, 4 billion higher up to 11 billion.
yeah.
A whopping difference. So it would be less than half of the number in 2100 that the UN is projecting that we're headed toward. So we can humanely stop overpopulation and change course.
Now, how did Thailand and these other countries bring this about?
It was interesting. They did it with a lot of humor. I had some Thai physicians in my home back 40 years ago when I used to work at the University of Minnesota at the Center for Population Studies. And these young physicians came over to get a master's degree from the man I worked for, Dr. Harry Foreman, who was the director of the Center for Population Studies at the university. And we had them for dinner, and they told us then, they said, you know, the biggest problem in Thailand right now in addressing the population issue is because we have such a modest culture, it's a totally taboo subject to talk publicly at all, back then it was in Thailand, to talk about family planning. And a gentleman named Michai Viravedya thought outside the box. He transformed the culture with regard to their taboo around family planning. And he helped them realize that in order to stop the dire grinding poverty of having 7 children where they couldn't even feed and clothe 7 kids, most people couldn't, most couples, they dramatically have reduced that. He set up a program, he used a lot of humor, he set up a program with the police called Cops and Rubbers, where the policeman hands somebody a condom, hands them a ticket, and then they hand them a condom. Taxi drivers hand out condoms. Michai has a restaurant in Bangkok, and the name of the restaurant is Cabbages and Condoms. And the byline is, they serve good food and condoms. and he used a lot of humor to dramatically transform the culture of Thailand.
Well, maybe we need to have him come over and teach American humorists how to do it.
Wouldn't that be terrific? Yes, I've also been in contact with him over the last year or so, and we've talked about possibly having him over here.
And maybe is he getting up in years now?
He is, in fact, yes.
And maybe we ought to send the humorists from America over to him then.
That would be good. That would be great.
Have him teach them how to make fun out of the challenge that we have, a very serious challenge.
Yes.
Of reducing the population.
Yes, and it's happening in other countries, as I mentioned too, Iran, Brazil, many countries on the planet, the people are realizing. In fact, in China, did you know that recently in China they have been relaxing, the government again recently relaxed their so-called one-child policy. And by the way, I always refer to it as the so-called one-child policy because it never really was a one-child policy. They had, right from the start, they had exceptions for ethnic minority groups, and they never enforced the policy in the rural areas all that much. And so, for example, there was a gentleman, a physician, a well-known physician who was a distinguished alum from Augsburg College several years ago, who spent his whole life as a physician in China. He was born there to missionary parents, and he told me years back, he said recently he'd been on a train in China, and on the train all of a sudden gets this middle-aged Chinese father with 3 little kids coming along behind him. And they were talking in Mandarin, and finally after they got comfortable, he said to the gentleman, "May I ask you a question?" He said to the farmer, and he said, "Sure." He said, "Well, why is it that you have 3 children right now? Because don't you know the government's one-child policy?" And the farmer chuckled and he said, "Well, yes, but there's an old saying in China that about that the mountains are high and the emperor is far away." So he had 3 children.
So the policy really was meaningless outside of
certain areas. It was relatively meaningless, right?
Yeah.
Right. So instead of China's average fertility rate ever getting down close to 1, it got down, I think, to 1.6 or 7 or 8, somewhere in there. It did not get down all that close to 1 at all because they had these exceptions and the way they enforced it and so on. So, but recently they relaxed it even more. You know, they've been relaxing it several times, and recently the relaxation that they said was that if a couple were to marry and each of those people had been only children, then they would be allowed, in certain instances, they would be allowed to, instead of having only one child, then they would be allowed to have two. However, the research is showing that even though they have relaxed that, a vast numbers of the people that are now eligible to have a second child in China don't want to. They have come to realize the benefits, the economic benefits, the resource benefits, the caring benefits and so on, educational benefits, healthcare benefits. They've realized that the benefits of having only one child.
Well, I think some families had many children because they wanted to count on those children taking care of them in old age.
Sure.
But
That used to be true, more
it
than it is
used to
now.
be true, yeah.
Yeah.
And
There's still some cases of that in the world, of course, but
now, obstetricians tie the tubes of some women on their request, and vasectomies are performed. Are these part of the plan too?
well, certainly all of those things will be helpful, of course, and that's but well, we like to think of it this way. Once Americans, and one way we thought of this in particular is just for example, take American men. If every man in America, or woman, or both, but let's just say every man in the United States, if every man realized that the world right now is significantly overpopulated at 7+ billion, headed toward 10 or 11 billion by 2100, and it's wholly unsustainable. If every man realized that and fully realized that the solution to the problem, the humane solution to the problem, is dramatic reduction of births well below an average of 2 per couple, down more closer to 1, then men would probably line up in droves at vasectomy clinics and other places, and as well as women, of course. But in other words, the problem is not, we believe that the problem is not so much delivery of family planning as it is delivery of the grim realities of the truth of the matter, that we are significantly overpopulated in the world and in the U.S. and in Minnesota and so on.
So we have to teach and motivate people to pay attention,
Surely.
and let them solve the problem in their own humane way.
That's where it has to start. That's where it has to start. Now, I see some people have a mistaken notion with regard to solving overpopulation, that by redistributing wealth, resources, by cutting down on consumption, that will solve overpopulation. And of course, those are really bogus, flawed, highly flawed ideas, but they're very widespread in our culture. For example, I drove here in a Prius, and we reduce on our consumption, and we compost, and we recycle, and we do complex fluorescent bulbs, and we do all those kinds of things. And I know that those are all good, that my wife and I do those, because they cut down on my ecological footprint. They cut down on my carbon footprint. But it's important to understand that not a single one of those things does anything at all to help humanity stop and solve the overpopulation crisis. There's only one thing that's going to help solve overpopulation on the planet. One, simply stated, that is reduction in the number of people.
A reduction of births.
And you do that through reduction of births.
Yeah.
There's no other way to make it no other humane way to significantly improve and address the overpopulation crisis.
Yeah.
We can't. Technology is not going to help us solve it. Technology may buffer and buy us a little time, but it won't help us solve overpopulation in and of itself. The only thing that will help us to do that is to dramatically reduce births.
So there is no such thing as sustainable growth in population.
No such thing as sustainable growth. You can have one or the other, but not both. You can either have sustainability or you can have more growth. But if you have more growth in terms of human numbers and consumption and depletion of resources and pollution, if you have more of that, then you're not going to have sustainability.
Yeah. Well, Dave, we have only about 4 minutes left. Are there some of the books and other publications that you'd like to draw to the attention?
Sure.
Of
This
our
is
viewers?
this is a great one, and I love it.
The
I've got several
End
friends.
of Fossil Energy.
The End of Fossil Energy, and then the back says, "What's next? It's up to you."
Yeah.
And this is a friend of mine, written by a friend of mine who's a retired engineer, had his own engineering firm in Maine, and now he's a part-time farmer in Maine, but he's also an inventor. In the last few years, 20 years or so, he's taken 4 vehicles, starting with a golf cart, and then a small tractor, and then an automobile, and then a larger tractor, and he's converted them all into solar power with batteries. So he is saying, yep, he is saying in this book, he is asserting, and I fully support him on this, that humanity needs to do several major things in the next lifetime. He's talking about the oil age here in 2 lifetimes, and what he means is the last 80 years and the next 80 years, basically. Mm-hmm. And he's saying that in the next 80 years, we've got roughly a window of roughly 80 years on the planet in which to do several major things, two of the biggest. Number one is dramatically reduce total population on the planet back down to the range of 2 billion or so, which is, the experts are saying that's truly sustainable. Number 2 is to dramatically, as rapidly as possible, transition off of fossil fuels, which are unsustainable.
So how would somebody get a copy of it?
Anybody can go to our website, worldpopulationbalance.org, and you can go there and just click on the contact button, send us an email, and say that you would like a PDF of Mr. Howe's book, and we will be delighted to send a copy.
So, and that means you would send it to them as a PDF.
Right.
They could print out on their own.
Right, exactly.
Printer.
And also on our website, and actually there's hard copies available too for people. There's a few of those too as well. And on our website too, we also have our Sustainable Population Pledge, and we would be delighted to have you all come up and join us by signing the Sustainable Population Pledge at worldpopulationbalance.org.
Good. You have some other publications here, but are there any that you would recommend particularly?
Well, here's an interesting person. This person just recently joined he's an Australian. His name is Dick Smith. It says right here, Dick Smith's Population Crisis. He's one of the most respected people in Australia, a very wealthy businessman who used to own a chain of electronics stores in Australia. And here's a DVD that he made, and here's a book. And he also took $1 million 3 or 4 years ago now, set it aside into a special fund to set up an award patterned after the Nobel Prizes to be given out to, I don't qualify, I'm too old, but a young person on the planet, somebody who's young, 30 years old or so, who helps alert the people of the world to 2 major things. Number 1, we're significantly overpopulated already, and number 2, we are dramatically over-consuming resources. And so those 2 things, and he is planning to give some award, that $1 million prize, to a person so if anyone watching this program would like to was intrigued by that, would like to work to earn that prize, I would be thrilled to partner with you to help you to win this $1 million award that he has set up.
Well, Dave, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Bill.
I don't suppose everybody realized that you could perhaps learn to win $1 million by watching this program.
Great, that'd be terrific.
So we look forward to learning more from you in the future. Thank you for tuning in to our program on Overpopulation is Solvable.
Thank you.